Today, Mark and I are talking about the most exciting part of being an association leader, the commonly agreed upon legal duties of nonprofit boards. It's a bit of the legalese of board service. Granted, slightly boring, but completely necessary that you understand so you're protected as a volunteer leader in your role. So let's jump right in.
A good place to start in any new board member orientation is with the basic legal duties of any nonprofit board. As defined by the National Council of Nonprofits and considered a standard in nonprofit governance, there are three primary duties known as duties of care, loyalty, and obedience. Duty of care refers to the board's general responsibility to take care of the organization, including its people, its assets, and the stakeholders of its mission in a sustainable way. Duty of loyalty refers to loyalty to the organization and its mission above loyalty to self or loyalty to any subgroup or alliance within the organization. It's important to know things like who the official spokesperson is. It's not every board member. That you shouldn't take it upon yourself to post organizational information or plans to social media. You should support the decisions of the board, even if you are in the minority. And you shouldn't gossip with your chapters or other members or other stakeholders. Not doing those things or understanding those things is all part of the duty of loyalty to the organization. And then there's duty of obedience, which refers to obedience to all governing laws, statutes, and stated purposes of the organization. These include the laws of the state you're domiciled in, your articles of incorporation, and your bylaws, as an example. Now, these three duties combined, no one of them more important than the other two, are the basic common legal duties of any nonprofit. But what about this fiduciary term? People tend to toss this word around because it sounds important. However, and it is important, however, people often don't truly understand what it means. Often people confuse or improperly define fiduciary to strictly mean financial oversight. It's truly much more broad than that. Your fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of the organization is not a separate and unique responsibility, but rather is incorporated into each of the three duties: the duty of care, the duty of loyalty, and the duty of obedience. All of those things combined represent your fiduciary responsibility.
Minimally, the board needs to be focused on the three primary legal duties already mentioned by Mark. If that's all you're doing as a board, however, one could argue that you're merely babysitting the organization rather than working to move it forward. The board responsibility that is often overlooked is that of foresight, or in other words, the board's focus on anticipating disruptions. This is necessary to strategically focus on the long-term future of the organization. Using the foresight muscle to look forward to anything that may impact your organization, and this is a muscle most of us are not used to exercising, especially in a board capacity. It's very important, however, and needs to be a purposeful focus of the board. You must pay attention to what may disturb or disrupt, or in other words, change your profession or industry. Simply put, this is awareness of the environment in which you, your members, and your organization operates. We're all connected locally and globally, so as leaders, you need to understand these connections. Be aware of the impact that societal influences may have on your organization, your industry, or your profession, so you can make decisions that help future-proof your organization. Let's take artificial intelligence, or AI, for example. How might the integration of AI into daily life impact the profession or industry of your members? Where is the development of AI in relation to the industry or profession of your organization? Does AI present an opportunity for members to streamline operations, or does it threaten to put them out of business? As a board, being aware of this one reality, for example, can help position the education of your members or guide advocacy on their behalf. Because ultimately, if the board isn't focused on the future of the organization, who is?
And before we wrap up, let's quickly revisit the duty of loyalty as it refers to authority to represent the organization. There are two generally accepted types of authority in the nonprofit world. actual and apparent. Actual authority, as the term implies, is the authority a reasonable person in the office's position would ordinarily believe and expect to have by virtue of their office. For example, a board chair or president, or an executive director or CEO. Actual authority may be expressly granted to officers in the bylaws or by resolutions of the board, or by expressed agreement or policy, or even through previous precedent. Now, associated with actual authority is what's called implied authority, which is the authority to take actions that are necessary and incidental to the authority that has been expressly granted. For example, signing contracts, speaking on behalf of the organization, things like that. Then there is apparent authority, which is the authority that third parties reasonably believe an individual can exercise by virtue of their position or title, even though it may not have been actually granted. It arises where the organization knowingly permits the officer to exercise authority, or represents, knowingly or negligently, that an individual has authority. Acts committed with apparent authority are still ordinarily binding on the organization. Similarly, you need to understand that as a board member, you can't casually decide when you do and when you don't wear your board hat. By example, an individual director needs to understand that any time they talk about the organization, they are reasonably perceived to be speaking in their capacity as a board member, whether they acknowledge that or not. Check out our video about the board and staff working as a team for more information about effective governing versus administrative authority. But at least at minimum, be sure you know the expectations and limits of authority as defined by your specific organization.
That wraps up our presentation on duties of a nonprofit board. Please remember, board development is a journey, not a destination. Check out our free ebook, Board Training Checklist, Going Beyond the Orientation. And don't forget to take a look, as Mark mentioned, at the other short videos in our governance video series.
Thank you for checking out this webinar. Informed volunteers like you are integral to the success of any nonprofit. For more information about services that RGI can provide nonprofits just like yours, check us out at Raybourn.com. So until next time, thank you for serving.